Hello everyone, and welcome. I'm excited to have you here today. We'll be exploring the fascinating journey of fiber to fabric. This is the first slide, the cover slide, so I just want to briefly introduce what we'll be covering. We'll look into how raw fibers are transformed into the fabrics we wear. So, let's get started and discover this amazing process together. Let's take a quick look at the contents of today's presentation. We will start with fabrics around us, then explore what fiber is, and look at some plant fibers. We'll see how fiber is transformed into fabric and discuss the sources of different fibers. Moving forward, we'll understand the process from yarn to fabric and learn about jute, one of the important natural fibers. We'll also delve into the history of clothing materials to see how they've evolved over time. Next, we'll cover what fabric actually is, the role of yarn or thread, and the different types of fibers including animal and synthetic fibers. We'll examine how fiber is turned into yarn, specifically through spinning cotton yarn, and follow the journey from fiber to yarn. Finally, we'll wrap up with a summary of what we've learned and conclude with a thank you. This slide gives us the roadmap for today's discussion, connecting all these key points to better understand the fascinating world of fabrics and fibers. Welcome to our exploration of fabrics around us. On this slide, I want to highlight just how integral fabrics are to our daily lives. From the clothes we wear to the furniture we sit on, fabrics are everywhere, often unnoticed. They come in many different types, each designed for specific uses and qualities. Understanding these fabrics helps us appreciate their role and the craftsmanship behind them. This connects to the overall theme of how textiles shape our environment and our experiences. So, as we move forward, keep in mind how woven into our world fabrics truly are, influencing comfort, style, and functionality in countless ways. Let's take a closer look at the process of fiber to fabric. It all begins with fibers, which are the basic building blocks of textiles. These fibers can be natural, like cotton or wool, or synthetic, like polyester. The next step is turning these fibers into yarn, which involves spinning the fibers together to create a continuous thread. This yarn is then woven or knitted to produce fabric. Understanding this sequence helps us see how raw materials transform into the textiles we use every day. This process is fundamental to the entire textile industry and ties directly into the theme of how raw materials become finished products. Now, let's talk about yarn or thread, which is essentially a hair-like substance that forms the foundation of all yarns and fabrics. Think of it as the very building block for textile creation. This thin, flexible material is what we spin or weave to produce the fabrics we use every day. Understanding its basic nature helps us appreciate the complexity and variety of textiles. Whether it's cotton, wool, or synthetic fibers, they all start with this fundamental element, yarn or thread. Recognizing this connection is key to understanding how fabrics are made and how different materials influence the final product. This concept ties into our overall theme of exploring the basics behind textile manufacturing and design. Now let's talk about fiber. Fiber refers to the very thin strands of thread that form the foundation of textiles. These fibers are actually made up of even thinner strands, which we call fibers. Quite fitting, isn't it? When we look at fabrics, they're constructed from yarns, and those yarns, in turn, are made up of these fibers. Essentially, fibers are the tiny building blocks that give fabrics their structure and qualities. Understanding fibers helps us appreciate how different textiles are created and why they have specific characteristics. This connection between fibers, yarns, and fabrics is central to grasping the whole process of textile production. Now, let's talk about the source of fibers. There are actually two main sources we need to be aware of. The first is natural fibers. These are fibers derived directly from plants or animals. For example, cotton and jute come from plants, while silk and wool come from silkworms and sheep, respectively. These natural fibers are widely used because they are renewable and biodegradable. The second source is human-made fibers. These are created through various manufacturing processes, often involving chemical treatments. Examples include synthetic fibers like nylon and polyester, but in this slide, we're highlighting jute and silk again, which can also be considered as manufactured or semi-synthetic in some contexts. Understanding these sources helps us see the diversity of fibers used in textiles. It also connects to our overall theme of exploring different fabric types and their origins, which is crucial for appreciating their properties and applications. Now, let's talk about animal fibers, starting with wool. Wool is a natural fiber that we mainly obtain from the fleece of sheep and goats. But interestingly, it can also come from other animals like rabbits, yaks, and camels. Wool is valued for its warmth, durability, and insulating properties, making it a popular choice for clothing and textiles. Understanding the sources of wool helps us appreciate the diversity of animal fibers and their significance in the textile industry. This ties into our overall theme of exploring different natural fibers and their unique characteristics. Silk is a fascinating natural fiber that comes from the cocoon of the silkworm. These worms live on the leaves of mulberry plants, which provide the nutrients they need to grow. When the larva of the silk moth matures, it secretes a sticky fluid that hardens into silk fiber. This fiber is what we use to make silk fabric. As the larva continues to develop, it covers its body with this silk fiber, creating a protective covering called a cocoon. This cocoon acts like a shield, safeguarding the pupa inside as it transforms into an adult moth. Once the cocoon is complete, it is carefully boiled in water. This process softens the silk and allows us to unwind it, extracting the long, continuous fibers that are used to produce silk fabric. So, from the tiny larva to the beautiful silk fabric we wear, the process is truly remarkable and highlights the incredible role of nature in producing such a luxurious material. This connection between the silkworm and the final product shows how nature and human effort come together to create something special. Now, let's talk about synthetic fibers. These are fibers that are made from chemical substances, and importantly, they are not obtained from plants or animals. Instead, they are created through chemical processes in laboratories and factories. Some common examples of synthetic fibers include polyester, nylon, and acrylic. These fibers are widely used because they are durable, easy to maintain, and often more affordable than natural fibers. Connecting this to our overall theme, synthetic fibers have revolutionized the textile industry by providing versatile and cost-effective options for clothing and other materials. They demonstrate how scientific advancements can lead to innovative materials that meet various needs in our daily lives. Now let's talk about cotton, one of the most common plant fibers. Cotton is typically grown in fields, and it thrives in regions with black soil and warm climates. The fruit of the cotton plant is quite interesting. It's about the size of a lemon. When the cotton matures, these fruit balls burst open, revealing seeds covered with soft cotton fibers. Usually, cotton is harvested by hand, which allows for careful selection and gentle handling. After harvesting, the fibers need to be separated from the seeds, and this process is called ginning. Ginning involves combing the fibers away from the seeds, making the cotton ready for further processing. Understanding this process helps us see how natural fibers like cotton go from plant to fabric, highlighting the importance of agriculture and handcrafting in producing the textiles we use every day. Let's talk about jute, which is obtained from the stem of the jute plant. Jute is usually cultivated during the rainy season, which provides the necessary moisture for its growth. In India, the main regions where jute is grown are West Bengal, Bihar, and Assam, highlighting its importance in these agricultural areas. Typically, jute is harvested when the plant reaches the flowering stage, indicating that the fibers are fully developed. After harvesting, the stems are immersed in water for a few days. This process helps in rotting the stem, which makes it easier to extract the fibers. Once the stems have rotted sufficiently, the fibers are separated manually, often by hand. This traditional method is quite labor-intensive, but effective. Understanding this process gives us insight into the natural and sustainable ways jute is produced, connecting to our broader theme of eco-friendly materials and sustainable agriculture. Now let's talk about the next step in fabric production, which is fiber to yarn. Essentially, all these fibers, whether they are natural or synthetic, need to be transformed into yarns before we can make fabrics. This process is crucial because yarn acts as the basic building block for weaving or knitting fabrics. To put it simply, fibers are first spun or twisted together to form a continuous strand, which we call yarn. This process helps align the fibers and gives the material strength and flexibility. Understanding this step is key because it connects the raw material stage to the fabric creation stage. Without turning fibers into yarn, producing textiles would be impossible. So, converting fibers into yarn is a fundamental link in the entire textile manufacturing chain. Let's talk about spinning, which is the process of turning fibers into yarn. This is a fundamental step in making textiles. A simple device used for spinning is called a hand spindle, or tackly. It's a basic tool that has been used for centuries to twist fibers into yarn. Another traditional device is the charka, which is also hand-operated and allows for spinning on a slightly larger scale. Moving on to larger-scale production, spinning machines are used to produce yarn efficiently and in large quantities. Once the yarn is spun, it's then used to make fabrics, which are the raw materials for most of our clothing and textiles. This process connects directly to the overall theme of how raw fibers are transformed into the fabrics we wear and use every day. Now, let's take a closer look at the main processes involved in turning yarn into fabric. The two key methods are weaving and knitting. Weaving involves arranging two sets of yarns perpendicular to each other to create fabric. This process is typically done on looms, which can be either hand-operated or powered by machines. Weaving produces a sturdy, tightly woven fabric that's commonly used in many textiles. On the other hand, knitting uses a single yarn to create fabric. It's a more flexible and stretchable process, and it can be done by hand or with knitting machines. Knitted fabrics are often softer and more elastic, making them ideal for clothing like sweaters and t-shirts. Both processes are essential in fabric production and connect to our overall theme of understanding how raw yarns are transformed into the textiles we use daily. Let's take a look at the fascinating history of clothing materials. Early humans initially used natural resources like bark, large leaves from trees, and animal skins and furs to cover their bodies. These were the first attempts at clothing and protection. Over time, they learned to weave twigs and grass into simple mats and baskets, which shows how resourceful they were. They also twisted vines, animal fleece, or hair into long strands, and these could be woven into fabrics. For example, the early Indians used cotton to make their fabrics, which highlights the significance of cotton in clothing history. In ancient Egypt, both cotton and flax were popular for making textiles, demonstrating early advances in fiber use. Interestingly, in those days, sewing as we know it today was not yet invented. People simply draped the fabrics around their bodies. Think of how saris, dhotis, lungis, or turbans are still worn today without stitching. It's a testament to how traditional clothing often evolved from simple draping. The invention of the sewing needle was a game changer. Once people could stitch fibers together, it opened up a whole new world of clothing design and construction. Since then, stitched clothes have undergone countless variations, shaping the diverse apparel we see around us today. This history not only shows the evolution of clothing, but also reminds us of how human ingenuity has continually adapted to meet needs and express culture through textiles. All right, let's wrap things up with a quick summary of the textile manufacturing process. We start with ginning, which is the first step where cotton fibers are separated from the seeds. This is crucial because it prepares the raw cotton for further processing. Next, we move to fiber, where the raw material is cleaned and prepared for spinning. Then comes spinning, where the fibers are twisted into yarn, which is a key step in giving the material strength and flexibility. After that, we have weaving, which is the process of turning yarn into fabric by interlacing threads. Throughout this process, cotton balls are the raw material we begin with, and the final product we aim for is fabric. Yarn can also be used in knitting, which creates a different type of textile. Each step is interconnected, showing how raw cotton transforms into the fabric we wear. Understanding this process highlights the craftsmanship and technology behind textile production, connecting all the stages into a seamless journey from raw material to finished product.